Shabbat Shalom again. All right, so we're going to get a little serious on this one. This one goes through, I did mention to you guys that sometimes we just read through stories, and they might be a little simple. But sometimes if you reread through a story, you start seeing that there's details in these stories. I'm really noticing that the details that are throughout Scripture, they're not just randomly selected and somebody just wrote some things down. A lot of it's detailed in there. In rabbinical Judaism, especially if you get to Hasidic, Orthodox, we'll go through Scripture and the words, it's not just even just the words are in there is what this means, but actually they really dive into like counting the letters meaning certain things. Certain letters are larger than other letters, and they're spaced differently, and the way it's written, so it gets really detailed. And they say, how does that talk about you? How does that talk about God? What's this? So it gets really deep. So to just pass over certain things, if we do that, especially out of context, we miss a lot of details. I was going to share something right now, but I think I'm going to share it in the middle. I'm trying to place where I want to share something that with you guys, just something that it did come to me in a conversation. But the lesson we'll look at today, Deja Vu. Try to think of a good title for it, but I think I'm going to settle with Deja Vu for this one. And he dwelt, or it could be and he lived, or he lived there. So it's not like he is moving around. They're not nomadic. It's actually and he dwelt in a specific place. Vayashev, and it says in Bereshit, Genesis chapter 37, that's where we're looking at from 37:1 through 40:23. And in this, it says, Yaakov continued living in the land where his father had lived as a foreigner, the land of Canaan. Now to break that down for you in some lettering right here. Vayashiv, Yaakov, Ba'aretz, Ma'gure, Yevi, Ba'aretz, and then Canaan. And how that's broke down, if you notice the bright red letters there, the highlighted ones that I put in there, usually the bet, here goes some funny stuff. If you want to study a little bit of the Hebrew language and you get into like the bet and the vet, yellow right here at the end, that is what we'd call that a vet, but it's actually a bet. And then you have a bet. And you see the only difference is the dot inside there. Bet is a symbolization of a house or where you're at. So if you see a bet in the very beginning of a word, like this, it usually means like that's where you're at, like you're in something, okay? Bet and vet, same letter, same thing. So the difference you're going to get in the sounding for that is, let's say you're saying Shabbat. We say Shabbat. And then you have other people who say Shabbos, all right? And it has more of a V sound to it. But the B and the V would actually be the same letter, but it's difference between Ashkenazi and Sephardic. So you'll have a B sound or a V sound. So it's kind of intermingling with how it's pronounced, okay? So you'll have, without the dot, it's pronounced V, and then with a dot, it's pronounced B. But the dots were introduced, not that long ago. So the B's and the V's kind of blend together, depends on who you're talking with dialect. But if you see it at the beginning of a word, it primarily means it means somewhere you're in something. And to remember that, I remember taking a class on Hebrew years ago. They said, just picture it as being a house, but picturing it being a dog house. And the little dot is the dog. And then if the dog is in the house, it's bet. If the dog is out of the house, he's at the vet. So it helps you remember V and B. Okay, so
I always thought it was like there's a baseball.
Okay.
So that's how you remember the B.
B for baseball. Okay.
You see a little baseball in there.
Okay.
In the baseball diamond.
I could take that. Yeah. But I always thought it was like, okay, well the dog's at the vet, so it's a V, and if he's at the vet, it's the house. So he's in the house. Yeah. So that's where you would see when the words are put in the land, or this would actually be considered in the land, would be bet, aretz. So this is the land. So as we're connecting those, and then the vav in the beginning is also the word and. So that's the reason why our Torah part should be called and he dwelt, or and he lived in the area. Some translations do not have and, but it would be and Yaakov continued living. So that's how it would be worded, because in Hebrew it's actually run-on sentences. There's no real actually punctuations and stopping points. It's just a complete run-on sentence. So that's how it kind of goes. So it says, and Yaakov continued living in the land. In the land where his father, and if you get to the purple right there where it says father, and you see Abba, that's where we see the father, had lived as a foreigner. So we're in this context, we're seeing that his father lived as a foreigner, but now they're actually dwelling in this land, the land of Canaan. So Yaakov continued living in the land where his father had lived as a foreigner, the land of Canaan. Here is the history of Yaakov. When Joseph, now this is his son, because remember Yaakov had the 12 children, and then one of the children was Joseph, was 17 years old. He used to pasture the flocks with his brothers. Even though he was still a boy, once when he was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, that's the parents of the other brothers that he has, his father's wives, he brought a bad report about them to the father. So he brought a bad report to his father of the other children. And he told of their disobedience to their father. So yes, he was kind of snitching on them, all right? That's just the way we want to lay it out. So he came back to the dad and was like, hey, they weren't doing right in the fields. And he brought a bad report. And his father's going, okay, so you're seeing that you know what to do right and wrong, but they're not doing right. But he brought a bad report, and they got mad about it. And what I'm going to do in this chapter, we're going to go through this chapter. And a lot of people will read things, and I've noticed, and it's not necessarily you guys, not at all, but I noticed that people will take stories out of the chapters, but they don't look at the chapter as a whole. And I really want to look at the chapter as a whole today. And for a lot of people that, even for online, and people that don't read as a whole and in context of what's going on, these are true stories. These are true events that truly happened, and they happened for a reason, because God's going to show you something later about these stories. So I want to look at this as a whole story, all right? So now Israel, now who's Israel? Jacob. There we go. So Israel loved Joseph the most of all of his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a long-sleeved robe. Sometimes they say, well, what happened to the multicolored robe? Because people say it's multicolored. So old King Jimmy came around and wrote a Bible many years ago, and he was like, hey, we're going to call it a multicolored robe. The reason why it was multicolored, what they called it, was just because it was a designer robe. It didn't actually mean that it was multicolored. It doesn't even actually mean that it could have been long-sleeved. But what it means is this was a designer robe that his dad had. It was a fancy robe. That's basically what it was. When the King James Bible came out, they actually coined it as multicolored because that would have been fancy. That's the vision that they would have of being a fancy robe. And that's what stuck, and so everybody stuck with that. But the actual Hebraic term to it doesn't actually mean multicolored, it just means it was a fancy one. So everybody just kind of used their imagination on how to translate that, and I don't know why they just put, he gave him a fancy robe. You could have just put that. But so there was some versions will say long sleeve, some versions will say multicolored, some will say just a very fancy robe, or a tunic. So he gave him a long sleeve tunic or a robe. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his other brothers, they began to hate him and reached the point where they couldn't even talk with him in a civil manner. They couldn't even take it anymore. So his brothers and his families and his relatives began to hate him. They got to get a little jealous of it. They just didn't really like what he was saying. And as we go on from there, Joseph had a dream, which he told his brothers that made them hate him all even more. He said to them, listen, while I tell you about this dream of mine. We were tying up bundles of wheat in the field. So they're harvesting wheat in a field. And when suddenly my bundle got up by itself and stood upright, then your bundles came and gathered around mine and prostrated themselves before me. Yours bowed down to mine. And they were like, man, I don't like listening to this guy. This guy's talking a bunch of garbage. I don't like this. This is my little brother. Then his brothers retorted, and then, yes, you will certainly be our king. They're mocking him as being a king. Yes, you will be our king. Okay, you'll do a great job at bossing us around. And they hated him still more for this dreams and for what he said. So they started hating him even more. He had other dreams which he had told his brothers. Here I'm going to tell you another dream. And there was the sun and the moon and 11 stars prostrated themselves before me. And then he went on to say that he shared it with his dad. He said, "He's told his father too, as well as his brothers, but his father rebuked him. 'What is this dream you have had? Do you really expect me, your mother, and your brothers to come and prostrate ourselves before you on the ground?' His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind." So he's saying, "Who am I? Who am I? This is Yaakov." He's saying, "Hey, I'm going to be bowing down to you. You're going to be what? The king of Israel? Is that what you're saying? You're going to be the king of me, your father?" After this, when his brothers had gone to pasture their father's sheep in Shechem, Israel, that's his father, he asked Joseph, he says, "Aren't your brothers pasturing the sheep in Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." He answered, "Here I am." He said to him, "Go now, see whether things are going well with your brothers and with the sheep, and bring back word to me." So he sent him away from Hebron Valley, and they went to Shechem. So his father, he's sending his son out, "Go check on your brothers, see how well they're managing my sheep. Come back and give me word on this." I said, okay. I mean, it just sounds like just a normal story, and we read about these things, but a lot of it's taken out. I just want to see this in the huge story, where a man found him wandering about in the countryside. So there's this man, and he's out in the countryside, and he saw him wandering about in the countryside. But there's this guy just out there in the countryside with him. The man asks him, "What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for my brothers," he answered. "Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the sheep?" The man said, "They've left here because I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. It goes on to say, they spotted him in a distance. So they see their little brother coming up. And before he had arrived where they were, they had already plotted to kill him. They had already their hearts were so hard about what he was saying that they were like, here he is coming in the distance, and they're already saying, we could do something right here. We could just end this. That's the point that they were at. They knew that he was going to come check on them, see how the sheep are doing, see how they were responding to the sheep, and they said, "Look, man, he's just going to go back and snitch to Dad. Let's just go ahead and end this right quick." They said to each other, "Look, this dreamer is coming. So come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these water cisterns here. Then we'll say some wild animal devoured him, and we'll see then what becomes of his dreams." As I'm reading this, I'm having more and more thoughts come through my head with this too. But it says, but when Reuben heard this, now Reuben you think of being the older brother. He saved him from being destroyed by them. He said, we shouldn't take his life. He spoke up against the crowd. He says, hold up, no. We shouldn't take his life. Don't shed blood, Reuben added. He basically said, let him live. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilds, but don't lay hands on him yourselves. Don't you do it ourselves. He intended to rescue him from them later and restore him to his father. He says, I got a plan to come back and rescue him. Do not kill him. Do not lay hands on him. Don't kill him yourself. He says, let him live. So it was that when Joseph arrived to be with his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the long sleeve robe which he was wearing, the fancy robe, and took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty, without any water. And right here it actually states the cistern was empty, without any water, and it was empty. It repeated itself. And when you're ever reading into Jewish liturgy or the writings and the studies, especially when you get into the Talmudic stuff and things like that, they'll emphasize on things that are repeated, when things are repeated. And they said this one was repeated to know that the cistern was completely empty. Now, we would know that as a place of holding living water, a place of life-giving of water, but the cistern was empty. That would be what we would look as a wilderness, as a barren place with no water. That would be Midbar, which is like a desert or a wilderness. So they said they cast him into this cistern that doesn't have any water. No life from this well. This is death. So it's a visual of death. Then they sat down to eat their meal, but as they looked up, they saw in front of them a caravan of Ishmaelim. These are Ishmaelites. These are the people from Ishmael, from the descendants of them. And they're going to Gilead, and their camels loaded with aromatic gum, healing resins, and opium, and on their way down to Egypt. So they're making travel to go down to Egypt. And they see these guys coming. But what I want you to take note on here is they sat down to eat their meal. They literally just said, hey, let's just kill our brother. Let's throw him in there. He's going to die. He's going to starve to death, whatever. Whatever happens to him is going to happen to him. And we're so good with it that we can just go ahead and eat. It's like, how are you going to eat after you do that? You have no remorse. Like, I don't feel like eating, man. I just did that to my brother. It's like, no, let's go ahead and eat, man. Let's eat us a good meal. Yehuda said to his brothers, now Judah's getting in here, what advantage is it for us if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, to the Ishmaelim, instead of putting him to death with our own hands. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh. His brothers paid attention to him. So when the Midian merchants passed by, they drew and lifted Yosef out of the cistern and sold him for ½ pound of silver shekels. And they took him down to Egypt. We're going to reading. Reuben returned to the cistern, and upon seeing that Joseph was in it, tore his clothes and mourned. He returned to his brothers and said, the boy isn't there. Where can I go now? The cistern's empty. The boy's not in it. They took Joseph's robe, killed a male goat, and dipped it in a robe of blood. It is crazy that they killed a male goat. They're out watching sheep, but they killed a goat instead. Then they sent the long-sleeved robe and brought it to their father, saying, we found this. Do you know if it's your son's robe or not? He recognized it and cried, it is my son's robe. Some wild animal has torn Joseph into pieces and eaten him. Yaakov tore his clothes and, putting sackcloth around his waist, mourned his son for many days. Though all of his sons and daughters tried to comfort him, he refused all consolation, saying, no, I will go down to the grave to my son's mourning, and his father wept for him. In Egypt, the Midian sold Joseph to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officers, a captain of the guard. All right. We just read through that whole chapter. Usually I crack a lot of jokes and we laugh up and cut up and stuff, but we just read through a whole chapter. And the thing is it's amazing that we just shared this whole chapter here. But a lot of times in congregations or even youth groups or wherever you go at, won't read a whole chapter. And we just actually went through a whole chapter. And they'll pull a story out. But I'm going to pull a lot of details out and things that we looked at. And this is just one chapter. If we would just say, hey, we have one chapter to read through, sometimes God tells us things without actually telling us things. But he's telling us things. He's showing us things. But he wants you to know these stories, and you'll start pulling things from it. All right? And what I want to do is I want to look at this. Actually, I'll share this with you right now. It's a little harder for, say, if... All right, let's throw this out there. All right. People will say, Scott, you're not a Jew. You're not Jewish. You're not born Jewish. It's like, no, I'm actually a member of the Chota Cherokee tribe. Okay, yeah. The way I like to refer it to it, and I actually sat down with a lot of Jewish rabbis, and they were talking about, tell me a little bit about you. And I'm like, all right. When people always say, the people of the nations, and they always refer to that, and they looking at people, especially on that side of the globe, I was like, when your ancestors were marching around the walls of Jericho blowing shofars, building temples and doing sacrifices, my people were over here in leather diapers building huts and teepees and all that kind of good stuff and hunting deer. That's what we were doing. I had nothing to do with over there. We were as far away as a nation as we could be. So if we were of the world, we were on the other side of the globe while all this is going down. There's no record of my ancestors even in this thing. But I was sitting there thinking, yeah, but you're doing these things. It was like, I wonder why. It's like, I follow the scriptures, and I wear a talit, and they go, yeah, it's very that. It's like, but do you want to be Jewish? I was like, no, I have no. Why would I be? God made me Scott from Alabama. He didn't make me a Jew, but he can use me, and he could use you guys. He's like, am I going to, so they ask me, a lot of the times when I'm at synagogues and stuff, they'll say, hey, Are you going through conversion? When are you going to? I'm like, I'm not. God didn't make me that. He made me Scott, but he's going to make Scott something. I don't know what he's going to do with Scott, but he's going to do something with him. And it's interesting because I don't even know what he's doing with me. It surprises me from day to day. I remember walking up to the guys at some deacons of a church, and we're supposed to go out for lunch, and I was sitting at lunch, and I wasn't dressed this nice. I was just hanging out, and I was supposed to meet them, and there were some deacons and stuff, and they looked at me when we walked to the restaurant. We haven't met face to face, and they went to go eat, and I was like, oh, they're waiting on me, but they just went and got a table over there. I got a table here for both of them, and I walked up to them, and like the waitress was like, I think they're waiting on you. I was like, yeah, I know they didn't recognize me. I walked over there to them, and it was funny because I walked up, and they're like, oh. You could look on their faces like, you. It's like, yeah, I'm the guy leading the Messianic congregation there. It's like, oh, okay. I was like, I know, I get it. I think the same thing when I look in the mirror when I get up in the mornings. I don't I don't see it either, but that's the way it is. So we laugh about it and things like that. But I always exclaim that, no, Scott's just Scott, but Scott's doing whatever God's having him to do and whatever God's leaving me to do. It'd be a surprise for me too, going down this. It's a journey. It's a fun one. But God didn't make Scott Jewish, and that's just it. So I can't try to be something I'm not. I'm going to say God designed me this way and figure out why God designed me the way that he made me. So that's it. But when I'm talking with a lot of people, I'm hearing a lot of things, a lot of Jewish people, and I don't want you to get discouraged by this because you're going to run across a lot of Jewish people that say they've studied Torah their whole lives. They went to yeshivas and things, and they say, we know Torah very well. So that's great. You do know the Torah, but but the thing that it's hard to explain to them is not only do we study the Torah, but we study the fulfillment of the Torah. And they said, we don't study that. I was like, but if you did, you see where I'm sitting at. I'm not telling you to believe what I believe. I'm telling you at least to study what I say so you can understand where I'm coming at with these things. I've shared some insights in meetings with Jewish people that are not believers, and we were just sitting around having some discussions about some things, and I brought up some insights, and they were like, wow, that's some crazy insights. That's so truthful. How did you get that? I'm thinking, Jesus told me. I mean, it's like, how you, like, you know, and you can't just throw it out there like that. You just go, you know, it's there. Yeah, I mean, you can't really throw it in their face about a lot of stuff, but you just think yourself, I'm just telling you what Jesus said. I mean, you think it's profound. It's right there. You could have read it yourself. And so the thing is, don't get discouraged when you think, oh no, these guys know Torah so much. They do. But they only see it through a clouded lens. We actually got to see the living, walking, breathing Torah. And so my thing is I'm not bad-mouthing any of them. I'm not bad-mouthing any of the Jewish people who say, well, no, this way it is. Like, no, I would love for you to read this. Tell me your thoughts. And a lot of times it's like, well, it can't be this, it can't be this, it can't be this. Why? Why can it not be? There's so many coincidences. So with that, we're going to go on with our lesson. There's coincidences. So and I'm trying to get a lot of the kids to start taking notes. I have some things of taking notes on the Torah parshas that we go through. And through this one, if we were to have chapter 37 notes, this is probably what some notes would look like if you're just writing shorthanded little notes down. Joseph lived in the promised land, Israel's land, verse 1. Joseph pastured sheep, his father's sheep, Israel's sheep, verse 2. Gave a negative report about his brothers to his father. That was also verse 2. His brothers did not like the report that the disobedience of their father, verse 3 and 4. His father loved him greatly. His brothers became jealous, 3 and 4. He had a dream, a prophecy of his brothers will bow down to him at the wheat harvest time. Mocked him for being a king. His father Israel questioned, will I, Israel, bow to you? Will you be the king of even me, of Israel? His father sent him away to bring back word of his brothers and how they were watching his sheep. This is wandering man in the countryside, and he knew where his brothers were going to be located. Brothers were looking for him, see him from a distance, and plotted to kill him. Reuben intervened and said, let him live. His brothers stripped him down, sent him to death. And they set him down to eat food after sending him to his death. Yehuda said, we cannot kill him by our own hands, but sell him for money. Yehuda sold his brother to the other nations for a half pound, 20 pieces of silver, verse 28. Reuben returned to his brother, found the cistern emptied, and returned back, saying, the boy is not there. Verse 29 and 30. His brothers killed a goat in his place to fool the father, 31 and 33. Israel mourned the death of Joseph. 34 and 35. In the book of Jochanan, John, chapter 5, it says, "In addition, the Father who sent me has himself testified on my behalf, but you have never heard his voice or you seen his shape. Moreover, his word does not stay in you because you don't trust the one he sent. You keep examining the Tanakh because you think that in it you will have eternal life. Those very scriptures bear witness to me, but you don't come to me in order to have the life." If we look through this, I wanted to stay in one book. I really kind of wanted to just stay in one book with this one. I like the book of Matthew. And in chapter 15, it says, Jesus, shepherd of Israel's sheep. He said, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." And this lady came. She was crying. He says, but she came and she fell at his feet and said, "Sir, help me." He answered, "Is it not right for to take the children's food and toss it to the pet dogs?" She says, "That's true, sir, but even the dogs eat the leftovers that fall from their master's table." So much on that story. Then Yeshua answered, "Lady, you are a person of great trust. Let your desire be granted." And her daughter was healed at that very moment. He said, "But I came for the sheep of Israel." That's what I came to do. Then Yeshua, the shepherd of Israel's sheep, he says, "I am a good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, since he isn't a shepherd, and the sheep aren't his own, sees the wolf coming and abandons the sheep and runs away. But the wolf drags them off and scatters them." He goes on to say about Yeshua's negative report about the children of Israel. He says, "Woe to you, hypocritical Torah teachers and the Parashims! You are like whitewashed tombs who look fine on the outside, but inside are full of dead people's bones and all kinds of rottenness. Likewise, you appear to people from the outside to be good and honest, but inwardly you are full of hypocrisy and far from the Torah." And if anybody's reading this and thinking, hey, if we're going through these things, and they say you're just taking things, and the reason why I'm going through this, there's many other verses that can be pulled for these many other verses. I'm just staying with a little bit, and I'm putting the references. And for anybody watching or you guys taking notes on this, go back and read the full in context. But I'm giving you points of where to look and find references. It says, God greatly loves Yeshua, his son. While he was still speaking, a bright cloud enveloped him, and a voice came from the cloud, said, "This is my son who I'm loved, who I'm well pleased. Listen to him." It goes into Philippians saying, Yeshua, everyone will bow. In the honor, the name given Yeshua, every knee will bow in heaven, on earth, and under earth. And every tongue will acknowledge that Yeshua the Messiah is Adonai, the glory of God the Father. It goes on to say in Matthew, where it says Yeshua was mocked as a king. The governor's soldiers took Yeshua into the headquarters buildings, and then the whole battalion gathered around him. They stripped him of his clothes and put him in a scarlet robe, wove thorns branches onto his crown and put it on his head, and put a stick in his right hand, and they kneeled down in front of him and made fun of him. Hail to the King of Jews. They spit on him and used a stick to beat him about his head. And then they had finished ridiculing him, and they took off the robe, put his own clothes back on him, and led him away to be nailed to the execution stake. And then there, I'm going to pause for just a second to say that how many times do I hear people that the Jewish people, they hate, they don't want to be around places that just have crosses everywhere, and I understand it because crosses were a sign of death. Christians look at it a little different, or they should, but it says that the Jews killed Jesus. That's the thing. The Jews killed Jesus. And they say, oh yeah. And I know a lot of, and I'm not bashing the Catholics. I have some friends that are Catholics. But I will dog the teachers of the Catholic faith of saying things out of context, of replacement theology, replacing things and things. But I like to thank the Roman Catholics. Did they not teach this? It says it was Rome that actually mocked him and beat him and killed him. And we're going to get to that in just a second, but talk about that, and they say, well, the Jews killed him. We all did. We all did. Right. Nobody's right or wrong. You can't point fingers after this mess up that we did. So we go through that. There's Yeshua reporting on how the shepherds led. It says, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, accompanied by all the angels, he will sit on his glorious throne, and the nations will be assembled before him. This is a good dream, a dreamer. And he will separate people from one another, and the shepherd's sheep from the goats. There's a difference between the sheep and the goats. The sheep will be placed at his right hand and the goat at his left. You can't trick him with the blood of the sheep or a goat. No trickery there. You can also keep reading from verses 34 through 46, or you can also read that it's Ezekiel chapter 34 that this is actually referencing to. So a good note on that one. Then we look in Matthew. There's a random wanderer around the countryside. And Yochanan wore clothes of camel's hair and with a leather belt around his waist, and his food was locusts and wild honey. People went out to him from Jerusalem, from all Judah, and from the whole regions around the Jordan, confessing their sins that they were immersed by him in the Jordan River. And you say, well, that was a weird connection. You're saying a wanderer and stuff like that. I'm just saying that we just talked that there's some guy around the countryside in passing. I don't know why it was there, but it just made me click to saying there was another wanderer in the countryside too. Is there a connection? I don't know. I'm not saying there's a connection, but I'm just saying it's mentioned. It's mentioned. Is there a connection? Oh, I might find something. Then in Matthew it also goes on to say, but he answered, and this is talking about the sons of Israel plotting to kill Jesus, plotting to kill Yeshua. But he answered, if you have a sheep that falls into a pit on Shabbat, which one of you won't take hold of it and lift it out? But how much more valuable is a man than a sheep? Therefore, what is permitted on Shabbat is to do good. Then to the man he became restored. He said, hold out your hand, and he held it out, and it became restored, as sound as the other one. But the Parashim went out and began plotting how they might do away with Jesus, with Yeshua. He says they already see him coming from a distance. They're like, here he comes. We got to figure out what we're going to do to this guy. Peter speaks up and says, no, let him live. Yeshua said to him, friend, do what you came to do. Then they moved forward, laid hold of Yeshua, and arrested him. At that time, one of the men with Jesus, Yeshua, reached out his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the Kohanim Hagadol, that's the high priest, cutting off his ear. Yeshua said to him, put your sword back where it belongs, for everyone who uses the sword will die by the sword. Don't you know that I can ask my Father, and he will instantly provide more than dozens of armies of angels to help me? But if I did that, how could the passages in the Tanakh be fulfilled that says it has to happen this way? And at that time you think, well, Peter just stepped in and was like, no, let him live. He says, no, things have to happen. And Joseph's in a pit, and he goes, he doesn't know that things have to happen. This has to happen. He says, just put your sword away. And I want to share something, and this is going back on our Torah parsha. Reuben, the older brother, Reuben actually says to everybody there as they're putting their brother in the pit, he looked down and he says, hey, don't put your hands on him. Don't kill him. He's our brother. Don't do that. And he had plans. I'm going to go and do it. He says, let him live. That was what he said. Let him live. And the crazy thing about it was, years later, we're going to read in Deuteronomy chapter 33, Moses, before he died, gave blessings to the children, blessings and curses. And the first one they spoke to was the older brother Reuben. Do you know what the blessing he gave Reuben was? This is the blessing that Moses, the man of God, spoke to the people of Israel before his death. This is 33:1. It goes down to the first blessing. Let Reuben live and not die out, even though his numbers were for you. So Reuben, your family, through Moses, through the lineage and everybody there, he says, Reuben's family, let him live. That was the blessing that he got. The same blessing that he told Joseph down in the cistern. Let him live. And then that also brings me to the other one. I'm going to bring this one up here too. So Peter stood in front. He says, no, I'm going to fight for you. I'm not letting him take you. You're going to live. He kept saying, nobody's going to do this to you. No. No, you've got to be king. You're going to do this because things have got to happen. So Peter steps out in front of him, Kepha, and he's like, hey, cuts the guy's ear off. He's going to fight for him on this. Later on, there's a blessing for Kepha. I also tell you this, that you are Kepha, which means rock. And on this rock, I will build my community. And the gates of Sheol, death, will not overcome it. That means you will live. Let him live. The community. Because of his standing up and saying, no, let him live. And Reuben standing and saying, let him live. Both of the the community that comes afterwards, let it live. Let it live. Sheol will not have an overpowering coming over it. And then we go on to Matthew again. Yeshua put to death, and people ate good meal. When Yeshua had finished speaking, he said to his Talmudim, as you know, Pesach is 2 days away, and the Son of Man will be handed over to me, nailed to the execution stake. Now we got to do this quick. We got to do that. We have a festival at our hands, and we're going to have some food. I got to get back home. We got to get this taken care of. And afterwards, after he's crucified, who's going to sit down and have a good little meal and not feel bad about what they did? So the way we got that taken care of, let's enjoy our Passover meal. We're going to eat good, not even feel bad about it. And in Matthew, Yehuda sold Jesus, Yeshua, for silver coins. Then one of the 12, the one called Yehuda, it's crazy to think, Yehuda, he went ahead of the Kohanim and he said, what are you willing to give me if I turn Yeshua over to you? They counted out 30 silver coins and gave it to him. From then, he looked for a good opportunity to betray him. And it's crazy that in Joseph's story, Yehuda sold him for silver coins. And here, Yehuda sells him for silver coins. Yeshua handed over. Why should we kill him with our own hands? Maybe we should have other people kill him or do whatever they want with him. We shouldn't do that. He's our brother. They will sentence him to death and turn him over to the Goyim, to the other nations, who will jeer at him, beat him, and execute him on a stake as a criminal. Let the Goy kill him. Let the Goy do whatever. We sell him to the other nations, the people not of our family. It's not even off our hands anymore. We sold him. The tomb is empty and the body is missing. And early on the first day, the week, while it was still dark, Miriam and Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she came running to Shimon Kepha and to the other Talmudim, the disciples, the one Yeshua loved, and said to them, they've taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they've put him. The tomb is empty, and the body's not there. Yeshua, or goat blood. It was the governor's custom during the festival to set free one prisoner whom the crowd asks for. There was at the time a notorious prisoner being held named Yeshua Barnab. This is Barabbas. So when a crowd had gathered, Pilate said to them, whom do you want me to set free for you? Barabbas or Yeshua, called the Messiah? They take one or the other. And this is looked as the scapegoat where they send out the goat. It's reflected on. So somehow there's going to be some goat's blood on this. And then we go through the morning of the death of Messiah. Therefore, let the whole house of Israel know beyond a doubt that God has made him both Lord and Messiah, this Yeshua, whom you executed on a stake. This is happening in Acts after this, and they start realizing what they did. On hearing this, they were stung in their hearts, and they said to Kepha and the other emissaries, brothers, what should we do? And they started mourning. We just did something that we didn't know we were doing. He said, yeah, and now you mourn and take that to your grave. I'm going to share this one last verse right here with you. But don't think that it is I who will be your accuser before the Father. And this is the part that breaks my heart to the pre-believing Jewish community out there. Don't think that it is I who will be your accuser before the Father. Do you know who will accuse you? Moses himself, the very one you have counted on. For if you really believe Moses, you'd believe me, because it was about me that he wrote. But if you don't believe what he wrote, how are you going to believe what I say? With this, we're actually going to pick up next week. And there's a good side of this. This doesn't even end like this. This was one chapter. This is one chapter. And when I tell people, the kids in the D home, and talk to them, if you stay in Scripture, things connect. And you can say, well, I can show them verses in Isaiah. I can show them this. I just one chapter. Just one chapter. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so much there. And like I said, with the time we have, I just gave you reference points. And I just try to stay in just one book of the Gospels, and I kind of scattered out some that you can look up some other ones, but just one. I mean, I barely touched on one, and you saw how deep that was with verses that were pulled. That's just one chapter. So when people say there's some coincidences, you can't make this up. You can't make this up. You know, and I do share this a lot. You know, when I tell them, I said, hey, I pray the Shema every morning, and I face Israel when I do. And they say, oh, you're worshiping Israel. No. Israel is the proof that God exists. So I face my proof. I look at it and say, because that country's there, and because those people are there, and because God has a promise that He made with those people outside of the Torah, He says, no, I'm making this promise because I have some fulfillment to make. That's proof. That's proof that my God is real. So I'm saying we take one chapter, we go through it, and we break it down. Usually we're cutting up and joking and stuff, but this is a serious one. When you sit there and say, oh yeah, you're just kind of, I'm not just kind of pulling stuff. This is the life of Yeshua. He says you have to go through these things because there's going to be restoration later. There's going to be a family reunion. And we're going to see that next Torah Parsha. I'm going to actually look forward to sharing that one with you guys. Some good stuff in there. So with that, I'm going to close this in prayer. I'm going to sing one of our blessings, and we'll be good for the day. God, we just want to say thank you very much for this day. Thank you for your word. It gives us an understanding of who you are. It gives us an understanding of what you're doing. This scriptures that we read and the stories that we read, a lot of times we all try to find what this means to us and how to make myself a better person out of it. Or this book, I always say, God, thank you for it. It has nothing to do with me. It just has everything to do with you. I'm just blessed to be part of the story, along for this ride. I have a heart. I think everybody in this room has a heart to see where this is going and the reconciliation that you're making with your people that we see happening. So many people are praying that they want you to return right now. And God, I want to just cry out as our community of not yet. I don't think you're done. I don't think this was the end of the story. And I just pray that we see the story to being fulfilled. And we'd love to see you come. We'd love to see the kingdom come right now. But I just pray that can we just hold out a few more and we'll suffer for a little while longer as long as we can just bring some more people. More of your, I guess, the original people, as we put it. We love you. Thank you for everything that you've been blessing us with. And it's in Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. We'll sing the V'nei Hemar. That's on page 8. Here we go. And it is said, the Lord shall be king over all the world. And on that day the Lord will be one, and his name one. V'nei Hemar v'haya Adonai lamelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu Yihei Adonai echad Ushemo echad. May Adonai bless you and keep you. May Adonai make his face shine on you and show you his favor. May Adonai look upon you and give you peace. Yevarecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha. Yor Adonai pano v'lecha ve'hunecha. Esa Adonai pano v'lecha ve'asem lecha. Shalom. Shabbat shalom, guys.